Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Some of my friends, followers, congregants, whatever they call themselves, asked me to address a topic that most see as controversial. I don't, because I think all topics need to be addressed. They asked me to address racism, prejudice, and discrimination. I don't particularly like to give my time to those three monsters because I think people who are committed to those are just that. Racism is an emotional commitment to ignorance. It's always funny to me that those people who profess God in their lives, who could actually be racist, actually could discriminate, and actually could be prejudiced among people. It's funny to me. I don't like to give my time really to that type of mentality, because that type of mentality, if you buy into it, you have poor self-esteem, poor self-worth, poor locus of control, and poor self-perception. Those things, if you buy into them, have the potential to destroy you internally with your relationship to God. So I personally, my philosophy, I outwork racism. I outwork discrimination. I outwork prejudice. Not for the mentality of showing the racists, those who are prejudiced or those who are discriminating against me, to prove something to them. I do it because God has commanded me to be excellent. God has commanded me to be excellent and to work within his will. So that's that. Now I come to my morning devotion. You know, the Quran, when I come out in my beginning, I always say, Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin, la sharika lahu wa bidhalika umirtu wa anna awwalul muslimin. I say, my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death are for God. Not prejudice, not discrimination, not racism. You see, because Islam says it admonishes the believers. It says to love thy neighbor as you love yourself. It says in Surah Al-Ma'un, which means take care of the neighborly need. You see, the God says, have you seen the man that denies his religion, his deen, his way of life? You see, deen in Arabic means you owe a debt to God. And he says people deny their debt or their responsibility to God because he drives away the orphan. He encourages not the feeding of the poor. He says, woe to those who pray to be seen by men while their neighbors are in need. He says, woe to those who make a public display of faith, but in terms of miserly in their giving to other human beings who need the most. He said, woe to those who share their faith only to help people come to what they believe, who look like them, who talk like them, who are congregated like them, who revolve in the same circles as them. You see, God is addressing racism in the most metaphorical terms. God is addressing prejudice and discrimination in the most innate terms. He says, woe to those who only share their faith with those who believe like them, who look like them, who act like them, who evolve in the same circles as them. You see, the Quran never mentions the faith of the neighbor. The Quran never mentions the nationality of the neighbor. The Quran never mentions the gender of the neighbor. He only mentions that their needs should be fulfilled. You see, it reminds me of a verse in the Bible. It says in the Bible, in the Quranic ideology, are people who are of the book. which means they will reveal scripture and they are believers. Do your homework. You see, Matthew says disciples came to Jesus and they said, when you were without clothes, did we not clothe you? When you were sick, did we not attend to you? When you were in prison, did we not visit to you? Jesus said, if you have not done it to the least of those, you have not done it unto me. I want to talk to you about racism, discrimination, and prejudice. Oh, the scripture talks about it quite frequently, but he does it in such an intimate, innate way that if you don't have a heart for God, you'll miss it. If you have not done it to the least of those, you have not done it to me. You see, the Bible and the Quran talk about the responsibility of taking care of God's people. The Quran says, have I not made you into many tribes and families? Not that you despise one another, but you get to know one another. La ta'arafu. But it's an implied task there. To get to know somebody, you have to know yourself. To get to know somebody, you have to get rid of your insecurities because they may not believe like you. La ta'arafu. To get to know somebody that doesn't look like you, that doesn't talk like you, that doesn't think like you, that doesn't behave like you. You have to get rid of your own insecurities to realize that they have a mind and God has given them free will. Who are you to discriminate against God's people? And he gave you free will to believe, and you won't let people believe how they want to? No. I have made you into many tribes and families, not that you despise one another, but you get to know one another. La ta'arafu. You see, but God is asking us here to have a little courage. God is asking us to move out of our comfort zones. God is asking us to move out of our cultural shackles and reach out to your neighbor next door to fulfill their needs, whether spiritually, emotionally, or just being a freaking human being. Excuse me. I get a little fired up sometimes while just being a human being who cares for his brother and sister, whatever condition they're in. You see, I have made you into many tribes and families, not that you despise one another, but you get to know one another. The Quran says, hold firmly to the rope of God all together and be not divided. And remember the mercy and grace and God's favor upon you. He said you were enemies, and he brought you together in love by his grace. He said you were on the brink of destruction and on the edge of the pit of fire because you let your differences divide you. You let your pride get in the way of justice and equality. You let your ego stop you from reaching across the aisle to your brother and your sister who needed you in a time of despair. You see, you let your faithlessness judge other people because they are different from you. What right do you have when God has shown you so much grace and mercy and love and forgiveness and has underwritten your mistakes, and you look at your brother and sister in disdain? The Quran says it's your ego, it's your nafs that keeps you from reaching across the aisle when you see your brother and your sister in pain, in need, in comfort. He said, had it not been for his mercy and his grace, we all would have perished. You see, God is admonishing us this morning to love thy neighbor as thyself, to take care of your neighbor's needs, to embrace God's grace and favor that he has shown to us, to develop to challenge, to transcend, to break barriers, to change norms, to go beyond and change the bounds of belief and take care of your neighbor's needs. You see, but this is going to take some faith. The Quran says that there are some people who say they believe, but they do not believe. They seek to deceive God and the believers. They make public displays of faith. But the Quran says when they're with their shayateen in their homes, when they're with their devils in their homes, they talk faithlessness. They discriminate, they are prejudiced. They seek to destroy those people who don't look like them, who don't talk like them. They make plans and plots and they're biased and they discriminate even though the person may be qualified. They discriminate even though the person may be adept and socially aware for the job that they may be getting or should be applying for. Now, listen. The Quran says, I have made you into many tribes and families, not that you despise one another, but you get to know one another. Don't tell me about your religion. Show me. Don't tell me how much faith you have in God. Show me. Don't tell me how wonderful God is. Show me. How can you love God whom you've never seen? And you hate and discriminate and you are prejudiced against your brother and sister to whom you see every day. Pray with me. I get a little bit too excited. I love life. I love human beings. I love God. And I try to show that by loving all of his creatures, whether black, white, gay, straight, whatever their condition, when they come to me, God's servants, I want them to see the God in me. I want them to leave a bit stronger. I want them to leave a little bit more encouraged. They never have to believe like me, but I want them to believe in the one who has made me believe in him. God, give us the best of this world and that of the hereafter, and save us from the fire of ourselves. God, it is only through your mercy and your grace that we even stay on the path of trying to be one with you. So don't let our hearts deviate after you have guided us to the truth. Rabbi Zidni Ilma. God, increase us all in knowledge and courage, lata'arafu, to get to know one another and be one community, one family, one nation, with one purpose and one goal, and that is to serve you. Assalamu alaikum. Fi amanillah. Peace.